Well, thanks for joining us on BloombergQuint. Now, India's EV story is slowly picking up pace, not just by, especially in two-wheelers, and not just by the virtue of more players coming in, but also by the government intervention. Over the last couple of months, we have seen a number of policies coming in from the Indian government, be it extension of the FAME policy, increasing the incentives of the FAME policy, and also the much-awaited PLI and battery manufacturing. Now, to talk more about this and to put things in perspective of where we are headed, joining me is Naveen Munjal. He's the MD of India's largest electric two-wheeler company, Hero Electric. So many thanks for your time and speaking to BloombergQuint today.
Thank you, Nishant. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure being here today. Thank you.
Where are we headed? We have in the past as well set ambitious targets, but in the last couple of months, we have seen a lot of interventions from the government as well, and there is demand definitely. Where is the EV industry is heading from here
on? See, Nishant, we've been actually in this space for a long time. And we've seen a lot of ups and downs. And while we've seen pushes from the back propelling us forward, we've also had a lot of headwinds our way in terms of the sector. But what we are finding now is this time around, there are pushes which are happening both from the center and from the states. Various states are coming out with their own policies. And not just from that perspective, not just the policies which are relating to EVs, but even the infrastructure creation. So we are seeing charging infrastructure coming up. We are seeing PLIs which are coming in for the battery manufacturing and new plant expansions and the new facilities coming in, etc. So there is a tremendous amount of push. The second thing what's happening is that we are seeing battery prices which have been declining over the last number of years. So lithium-ion batteries have improved dramatically in the last couple of years. The prices have dropped down. Plus, the petrol prices and oil prices have gone up. So that gap of TCO between an electric and an IC has increased hugely in the last year and a half or so. So we are seeing tremendous amount of changes which are resulting in this industry, which is going to be now a very, very important industry to reckon with. We anticipate a hockey stick growth from here on. So we are going to see a very, very high curve of growth coming in. Some of the factors, just to give you why I believe that, is in the last year, while we had all the pandemic and we had the lockdowns and we had supply chain issues and manufacturing issues and logistical issues, everything was going on, we still had a growth over the previous year of about 15% as a company. Now, in spite of all the challenges that we had, we were able to achieve that growth. The trend that we saw, in the trajectory we saw in the last quarter of last year, which is January, February, March, was actually very, very high. So we were shipping out about 9,500 units every month on month. And that trend to an extent has already continued even now. So the numbers may have dropped in April, May, but in June onwards, again, we've begun to see a trend moving upwards. And it's not just from a supply perspective. We're also seeing secondaries take off in a very meaningful manner. So the way we see this industry shaping up in the next couple of years is, at a realistic scenario, we would be at least about 20% of the current IC engine market by, let's say, 2026, which is 5 years from now, which means it's going to be about a 4 million unit market. Certain factors are going to fall into place, but that's the kind of a scenario that we are projecting.
Mm-hmm. And what led to the demand? I think EVs and used car market are the two space in the automobile sector, which actually grew during the pandemic. What led to the demand and where was the demand coming from?
So numerous factors led to this demand coming in. One of them, of course, a couple of them were to do with the ease and convenience of use with our vehicles. For example, in our product range, all the batteries are portable. So which means even if you're in a block of apartments, you can take your battery up to your apartment, charge it, plug it back into the vehicle, and off you go again. That's one where there are no distractions. You don't have to go to a petrol station. You're not going anywhere else and then getting to your work. And even if you get to work, you install your battery there, you just charge it this way you charge your mobile phone or your computer. That's one factor. The second is the running costs of these vehicles. So let's look at in terms of economics. So there are three factors to it: the TCO, the initial purchase price, and the resale value of the products. So let's look at the initial purchase price. Now, with this new FAME policy, which has come into play, the changes in FAME, where we've gone from 10,000 rupees per kilowatt hour to 15,000 rupees per kilowatt hour, the pricing has become extremely aggressive. So we are close to about 62,000 rupees, or even less than that in a lot of states for the city speed vehicles. Now, city speed variants are about 45 to 50 kilometer speed with about 80 kilometer range. Now, these vehicles are sub 60,000 rupees as against about 75 to 80,000 rupees in the counterpart in the commuter segment or in the IC engine. That's the initial purchase price. Then if you look at it from a total cost of ownership, the running of the vehicle. So if you're running your vehicle every day for about, let's say, 40 to 50 kilometers, which is high usage, you're looking at least 1 liter of fuel, which is about 100 rupees. Whereas you're looking at 1.5 units of power for our vehicles, which is about 12 rupees a day. So that 88 rupee difference, when you multiply it over a 3-year period, you're looking at 88,000 rupees saving, which is putting money back into your pocket. Actually, it's making not just the vehicle free. So people have begun to understand that concept, both in B2B and B2C. Now, the only other factors which are going to fall in place, one, of course, financing is a limiting factor at this point. Last year, financing has been low, but with this change in policy, what we're going to see is a trend from low speed to city speed vehicles. And when we are moving to city speed vehicles, these vehicles would be registered. They would comply with the norms for the subsidies, etc. So initial purchase price goes down. They are registered vehicles, in which case they qualify for more for financing and all of financing, and in which case that offtake is also going to increase. So we see numerous factors which are going to result in this whole market exploding from here on.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything government can do now to also add to the growth they've done already? But we saw in the FAME 2 as well, in the earlier iteration, we saw the numbers coming down in terms of people chasing incentives. But this increased incentivization could shift the thing.
Yeah, I think this is going to tip the scales in favor of EVs. This is going to be a very important factor for us to consider now. Mm-hmm. Is this the end all? No. I think there are other things which need to be done. Yeah. Some of the factors which really need to be taken care of. For example, we need to have, first and foremost, long-term policies for electrification. Right. Where are we really headed in the long run? Are we looking at an 80% conversion in the next 9 years till 2030? Are we looking at 100% conversion? Is it before that? Is it 2025? Is it 2027? There'll be different figures which have been floating around earlier. So one, we need to have very, very concrete goals to say that this is the cutoff date, by which time we need to be so and so much percent converted by that point of time. That gives impetus to all the supply chain, to tier 1, tier 2 suppliers to start investing heavily into that equipment and machinery and plant and logistics and the supply chain. That's one factor. Some of the other factors, like I was saying, financing has been a bit dear at this point of time. That's something that really needs to improve. We need to put more financing to this whole sector. The third factor is when we look at our B2B segments, now deliveries. Most of them are actually aggregator models. Now, how do you give a nudge to the aggregator to actually have his riders start switching to cleaner vehicles, because they are using second and third hand vehicles for deliveries. And those are the highly polluting vehicles. So they are BS3, BS4, etc. Now, how does that person who's buying a vehicle, a second or a third hand vehicle at 15, 20,000 rupees, suddenly graduate up to 60 or 70 or 80,000 rupee vehicle? So even though he understands the TCO, but the initial purchase price difference becomes quite high for him. So a nudge in that direction would certainly help. Leasing in that direction would certainly help. And another factor, which is actually a very important factor, is when we talk about programs, awareness, that's still very poor. When you go beyond our tier metros and tier 1, tier 2 cities, no matter what kind of infrastructure we have, we've got the largest dealer network across the country in this segment. So we've got over 700 dealers and sub-dealers across the country, but still it's too small for a country of this size and magnitude. The awareness is still very poor. So why cannot we actually have this electric mobility? When we talk about Swachh Bharat, for example, when we talk about pollution outside, let's talk about pollution in the air as well. So that's another important factor that would create awareness, and that awareness would entail in these volumes actually increasing substantially going forward. There are a number of steps that we still have to take. Battery manufacturing in India, we still don't have battery manufacturing. We've got assembly, but no manufacturing yet. PLI is there. And I believe that, there are going to be companies who are going to be looking at battery manufacturing going forward from here on. So in the next couple of years, we would see Indian batteries manufactured in India coming up. A lot of the states have begun to actually enhance their policies. So far, a lot of the state policies were actually related to manufacturing and not so much demand-led. Now we are beginning to see a change. We've seen Delhi policy, for example, and we've seen Gujarat policy, which are more demand-led rather than manufacturing-led. And that's going to help. So offtake of this industry, and as this industry begins to explode, then the manufacturing, supply chains, everything will begin to fall in place. But the primary factor is to create that ecosystem for mobility.
Right. And, the competition has also started to heat up in this space. We have seen Ola also coming up with ambitious targets of, about 1 million vehicles in few years down the line. How do you aim to keep yourself ahead of the curve? What kind of targets you have in place for you? Or what kind of partnership are you forging as well going ahead to create that dominance in the market that you have right now?
So yes, competition is heating up. In fact, I was told a figure of something like 400 odd companies in this space, in the electric vehicle two-wheeler space. I didn't know if this number, I was told this number recently. I'm not surprised. I mean, there's a lot of companies who are jumping into it, and not all of them actually, unfortunately, will survive. Because we're talking about automotive. In automotive, you've got to create the supply chain, you've got to create the dealer network, you've got to create the spare supply. You have to have a certain level of scale in order to really get your costs down, in order to really justify the volumes that you've got to be doing. So competition coming in is going to be good. It will expand the market. There's no two ways about it. So far, we are now 150,000, 2 lakh unit kind of a market. That market, I believe, is going to now begin to explode, and the whole pie is going to become bigger. How are we mitigating? How are we digging our moats around our business model? Is by numerous factors that we're doing. One, we've already created a very strong dealer network, which is there. So we're already interacting with the customers in a very strong manner, whether from a company or from the dealer interactions that we're doing. Just to give you a perspective, last year, we were very successfully able to blend a online plus offline dealer model network together. So the dealers were also pushing offline sales, online sales, while the dealerships were closed. And that's what we trained them to do. Now, what happens with that is that the momentum remains in the market. Even now, with all these lockdowns in place, we were actually shipping from our plant. We were pushing in the market, even though the dealerships were closed physically. But the dealers, in whichever market they could open up, they were supplying the goods, the scooters, to customers at their residences. Mm-hmm. Another factor, what we did last year, is people had not really tried out. So we've been advocating actually people getting on the vehicles and trying them out for a long time. But we had lockdowns on, so we couldn't really get people to try those vehicles. We couldn't do these road shows that we used to do, etc. So what we did is a 3-day return policy. So we told our customers that, you buy the vehicle, should you not like it, return it back to us, and we will take it back at no depreciation or anything of that sort. Mm-hmm. That's worked very, very well for us. We went multifold in terms of the sales over the previous year from an online platform. The other factors that we're doing is we are building an ecosystem around our dealerships, around our customer base, in order to make life a lot easier for them. So, for example, all our batteries are portable. So, which means, as I was describing earlier, you can take them up and plug them into your wall outlet. That said, customers still have range anxiety issues. What if I run out of a charge? So what we've started doing is installing a charging infrastructure around where our customer bases are. So we've already installed about 1,650 charging stations. These are in stores like grocery stores, chemists, and other places where in the markets where you would regularly go and park your vehicle there. So if you're parking your vehicle there, you might as well charge it just to do that top up that you could be doing.
How many cities are these?
This is actually now about, I would think about 40 odd cities, 30, 35, 40 cities.
So what's the average per city charging network like for you? And what's the target?
It differs because in a lot of cases, we've also gone into tier 3 towns where there would be very few charging stations that we've installed, in 10s or 20s or 30s or 40s. In a lot of cases, there would be over 150, 200 in this thing. So it all depends on the density of vehicles that we have, plus the dealerships, etc., that we've got. Now, the other factor that we're doing is that we understand that, a customer may have a breakdown at some point of time. He may have an accident. He may have a tire puncture. It could be any small thing which needs a quick fix at that point of time. So we've started training these roadside mechanics, which are we call them the preferred garage owners, the PGOs. These PGOs are being trained to handle electric vehicles. We've already trained about 4,000 of them. The idea is to take this number up to about 12,000 in this year and take it about 20,000 in the next year onwards. So this ecosystem that we're creating, now these guys can actually, once we've created this, they can fix any electric vehicle. So what we're trying to do is grow the whole industry. And with the industry, we will grow with it. And that's where we are also building our moats around in terms of the awareness that we're creating, plus the products. Now we've understand the products, what works and what doesn't work. And we believe the market at this point, the belly of the market is actually going to be not in the higher speed categories, but it's going to be more in the city speed categories because of price per points. So a customer who's buying a vehicle at about IC engine at about 75, 80,000 rupees is going to look at a similar price band when he's switching to electric, because for him, it's mobility he's looking at. He may sacrifice a little bit on the speed, but he does want torque, for example. He does want the convenience of portability of the battery and the convenience of being able to charge the vehicle anywhere. So there are numerous factors that we are looking at and numerous things that we're doing in order to actually make sure that we maintain our lead in the market.
What kind of numbers are you looking to clock by the end of this financial year? And you mentioned about 20% by 2025, 26. How much of the market share would you be having of that by?
See, what we're looking at this point of time, last year we closed our market at about 54,000 units. This year we're looking at about 100,000 units in this year. Now, we have a projection which is anything from about 3.5 to 4 million units in the next 5 years. Out of that, we have in excess of 1 million units. So it's maybe about 1.2, 1.5 million. That's the kind of a plan that we're building towards. But the way that we work is we've got a 5-year rolling plan. 2 years are kind of concretized. And then 3 years are more of just keeping our ears and eyes on the ground to see what's happening in the market and how do we really ramp up from there. So right now, for example, we are enhancing our production facilities and we are taking it up from about 75,000 to about 3 lakh units right now. But that said, we've already got the space to go up to 1 million units very quickly, should that need arise in the near future.
So you have the existing facility to take it to 1 million units, or you're going to set it up?
We don't know. The facility is not in place, but the land and everything else is in place right now. We're going to take it up to about 300,000 at this point of time. And from there, then we're going to ramp it up to about 1 billion.
How much are you looking to invest for that towards that capacity?
So this is, we have a broad plan, which is about 700 odd crores in the next 5 years.
Starting now,
which is going to go into manufacturing facilities. And it's not just going to be one facility. We're going to have multiple facilities in the next 5 years. We would want to be closer to the customer, save on freights, etc. Plus, right now, our facility is in Punjab, in Ludhiana. And that is where we are way too far from the port as well. So we are looking at international markets as well. So we would want to be closer to the ports once in the next couple of years.
So 700 crores and how many facilities roughly that you're eyeing at?
These would be, I would anticipate about 2 to 3.
Okay. And what about the charging stations? That will be over and above this investment, right?
That's separate. I'm only talking about the manufacturing facilities. Charging stations is separate. Charging stations, actually, we don't even look at it as a capex because we're not going to make any money out of it. We are clear on that. That's going to be investment. That's more of a marketing investment from us. That's more of a expense where we are giving confidence to the customers, but we know clearly that a lot of customers are actually not going to use it.
And you mentioned about your plans to foray into the international markets. Are you looking for partnerships for that, or you're eyeing on your own?
Not actively at this point of time, but that's something which, of course, we would expand into those markets as we go along, because we are getting a lot of interest from the international markets as well. So we would choose some countries where we would want to go, which have similar dynamics to what we have in India, because we don't want to make too many changes here. So we would look at some the markets to what we are, and then build it forward from there.
What about PLI and battery manufacturing? Is that something that's also looking at, not immediately, but in the later stage, to partner with the player to become a big force in setting up batteries as well, not just assembling?
No, we are not looking at battery manufacturing at this point of time. Battery manufacturing for us is best led to the specialists. Those guys have the R&D, they have the know-how, they know this market extremely well. We don't have that level of R&D. We don't have that level of expertise within a company to be able to get into the chemistries of batteries, etc. What we could possibly do in going forward is package the batteries ourselves. And also we buy the cells from other companies, and then we just package it. But at this point of time, we don't have plans for that. And the second factor is that, right now, the batteries are changing so dramatically. There's so much of change that's happening. We are already in generation 3 of our batteries, lithium-ion batteries, in the last 5 years. And we anticipate there's going to be dramatic changes that happen. So we would rather keep our options open at this point of time and not tie ourselves down with any one particular technology right now. That's something that maybe at a later stage, once we've got enough scale, not right now.
All right. Also, give me a sense of the product portfolio mix going ahead. It's going to look like how many models you have, about 6 or 7 models right now, if I'm not wrong, or more than that. What kind of product mix are you looking at? Are you looking to diversify beyond two-wheelers, perhaps get into bikes?
So what we are looking at is we have 5 platforms right now, and we've got 12 models on top of that, because in each, we've got numerous variants also of a particular model. For example, Optima, we've high speed, and we had a low speed, which we are transitioning to a city speed. And then we've got the long range vehicles, and we've got numerous, we've got a startup vehicle, which is a Flash, and then we've got a delivery vehicle, which is more for targeted at deliveries, Nix. We've got a family vehicle, which is Optima, and then we've got Photon, which is our higher speed vehicle. And then we've got Atria, which is the comfort speed, which is the lowest speed, but then the premium category of that. So we've got a very wide portfolio, which is catering to various segments. Now that's constantly going through some kind of upgradation. So for example, in the Optima, we are on generation 5 of the model since we launched it a number of years back. So we would be introducing new vehicles going forward. And these vehicles would be both for B2B and for B2C. So we would be looking at vehicles which are targeted only at delivery vehicles. So they've got more metal and less plastics, etc., with a higher range, which kind of pricing and the kind of durability that is required for that segment, load carrying capabilities, etc. Plus, when we look at electric bicycles also, that's something that we would certainly be, that's going to be natural progression and natural transition for us. We've already been in that space in the international markets, in the electric bicycle space. And that's something that we would replicate in India as well as the market begins to mature a little bit more. At this point, we are more focused on the scooters, and we believe that's going to be the mainstay. Also, if you look at the price points, so the scooter price point is now come down to mid 50s and early 50s in terms of the, depending on which market you're looking at. At that kind of point, a customer is naturally going to gravitate more towards a scooter than an electric bicycle because the pricing is so similar. So even though that market would be there, but we believe this is going to be the mainstay in India for the short term.
Right. And where is the demand coming from for you? What are the key markets and how is that expanding?
So different markets, we've got, we are present we're present across the country. So we've got a dealer network, like I was saying, about 700 touch points across the country. We are present in the metros and tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 cities. What we find is in the metros, it's more the higher speed vehicles that customers are buying, Bangalore, Delhi, etc. In a lot of markets, we are present in a lot of markets. What we find is customers, even though the lower speed vehicles are higher priced than the city speed vehicles now because of the subsidy that we're getting under FAME 2. But yet there is a market for those vehicles as well. People are still buying those. So it's not only a price sensitive market. People are buying it. People are also buying it for convenience and ease of use, where they don't require a license or a registration. It could be an older person. It could be a working woman. It could be a student who's going for his classes, etc. So we've got both segments which are running in parallel with each other. The markets which you see expanding very quickly and are tier 2 towns, which are adopting these very, very quickly, where the infrastructure, the public infrastructure is not so good. They are using these vehicles. We are also finding that places like Mumbai and Calcutta and Bangalore and Delhi and all are also people were buying these vehicles simply because of the economics that are working out in their favor. So if they're going to workplace, the initial purchase price is low, your running cost is low. It's even cheaper than a public transport that you are taking to your workplace and much safer than that. So there are numerous different cities. We've got about 30 odd cities which we work on in terms of the push that we are giving. But the market is coming from all different places as well. And also B2B. B2B is a very, very serious market now. We've had a B2B team for the past about 4 years where we've been inculcating that market. We've been seeding that market. Now we're beginning to see a lot of traction in that market because here a lot of customers are beginning to see the importance of having electric mobility. The running cost is lower and the economics work out very much in favor of the B2B customer.
What's the split between B2B and B2C like?
Sorry, right now, the split so far, B2B was about 7% for us in terms of this year. What we're targeting is where our total volume would go up. We're looking at about 10 to 12% would be B2B segment out of that. What we anticipate by 2025, 26, B2B would be about 33% of the total market for us.
It's always a pleasure speaking with you, sir, for your insights and taking us through what lies ahead for the industry. Thanks a lot for your time. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nishant. It's a pleasure being here today.